Today on Talking Solutions, want to welcome back one of our good friends, Dan Williams, the Chief Operating Officer of Three Square, the food bank. Thank you so much for coming back in.
Well, thanks for having me back in. I didn't wear out my welcome the first time.
No. And this is always an ongoing issue, solving the problem of hunger in Southern Nevada. In fact, Three Square is not just Las Vegas, not just Clark County. You actually serve well beyond the borders of our county.
Yeah, correct. We actually service 4 counties, Nye, Esmeralda, Lincoln. Clark obviously is about 98% of what we do, and it's because about 71% of the entire state lives in Clark County.
Just the other day, they were talking about Carson City and all the love up to the northern part of the state, but we have grown so much. It's not just that I live here. It's not just that we're here in Southern Nevada, but this is Nevada right here. This is the bulk of the state.
Yeah, although it didn't really start here, I guess, right? But this is where people have come to live, and they set up camp here. We're a thriving city, and we're a great community, but hunger is a problem across the United States, and it's no stranger to Clark County as well. In fact, we have above average food insecurity rates here.
Has that lessened at all? Because I know that during, as they're calling it now, the Great Recession, starting in about 2008, our food needs certainly would have ballooned.
Yeah, for sure. It skyrocketed in 2008 through 2010. It's leveled off for the last couple years, but we have been forever changed by that recession, and hunger awareness is something that is now prevalent. Food insecurity, the face of hunger, is not the homeless man or woman on the street with the sign. You know, back in the old days, you would think that, right? It was just the homeless. You had a sign. Those were the hungry folks. People making 6 figures lost their job. They had families to support. They were on unemployment. Those unemployment benefits ran out. Maybe they got a job, but now they're probably underemployed. So the new face of hunger is you and me. It's the working poor. It's mom and dad who both might be underemployed trying to get their kids fed.
It's in our neighborhood. It might be your next door neighbor. It may be the people across the street.
And people are proud, and some people don't want to come forward, and they struggle. And food is something that you can absolutely alter your intake on and still live. And different than third world countries, America, we're not dying of starvation or food insecurity. What we do here in this country is, because of the incorrect diets that we eat or the food insecurity levels we suffer from needlessly, we don't eat or intake foods that are bad for us. So what happens in this country, and we're paying for it today and we'll continue to pay for it until we break this cycle, is type 2 diabetes, hypertension, high blood pressure, depression, anxiety. These are all byproducts of food insecurity. And just the term food insecurity, you know, that's really only about 5 or 6 years old. When I was growing up, we were poor and hungry, and we didn't have the right intake of food. But now it's food insecurity. And so I think what we have to do in this country is really make people aware of what food insecurity actually is. It's a pretty complex issue that is studied every single year by the USDA. And I think that's really when you have naysayers out there that say, wow, you know, those folks need to get a job and feed their kids and quit living off the government. And that's not reality. The reality is most people who are on EBT or food stamps, and most people who are food insecure, are working. They're out there trying to make it every day.
Working part-time.
They might be working 3 jobs, right? Or their full-time job is just not enough, and they're one paycheck away from poverty. If you have a car repair, if your air conditioning goes out in your house, you're in a world of hurt.
It's a fine line. They're living on the edge, and nobody wants to live like that.
Yeah, and here we are in summer. It's hot. School is out. And when you look at summer hunger, it gets even worse. So when you look at a typical family, let's say they have 2 or 3 kids that are going to school and they're on a free and reduced lunch program. Now that child is not in school. How are you feeding that child that is accustomed to getting a free and reduced lunch at school, maybe for breakfast and lunch, and then we're probably serving the after-school meal? That child at least is eating throughout the day. And now all of a sudden that child is subjected to whatever is in the house. And this is a food insecure household to begin with. What does that look like? It's pretty scary.
The public service announcements that we're running for Three Square and the Summer Hunger are so touching to hear these kids saying that they wish they were in school. They wish they had a math test today.
Right.
That they would be willing to do so many things. And the reason why they really wish to be in school during the summer months, not because they're craving school, but because they need the meals.
They need the food. We can criticize CCSD in our education system, but if you really look at hunger in this county, Three Square is 8 years old. Before we really came on the scene, we didn't talk a lot about food insecurity or hunger in this community. Less than 1 million pounds was distributed through nonprofit channels, through feeding. We're going to be 40 million pounds this year.
Whoa.
There's an absolute difference from 8 years ago. So when you think of our results in education, you could make a strong argument that we haven't fed our kids the way that we could feed our children, and therefore their education is a result of some of that food insecurity. I believe that.
I buy that totally. Dan Williams is with us, COO for Three Square, the food bank for all of us here in Southern Nevada. You know what a fan I am of good nutrition. We know kids need to be nourished, and if kids are hungry, and as you described previously in one of our earlier discussions, the rumbling tummies, it doesn't help them learn.
You can't learn.
I don't really want to be hard on the school district. That's not their fault.
It isn't.
That the kids are hungry.
It isn't. So what we can do together is pretty powerful. I mean, we've seen it for the last 8 years. This town collaborates, and the nonprofits get together, and we talk about how we can collectively provide wraparound services for these kids. These kids didn't ask for this, and I'm sure the parents don't want this for their children, but inequality will always be there. There's always going to be hungry people. There's always going to be people that need some assistance sometime in the month. So for me, community is really about how we help each other. So how do we take care of that in a nation that has plenty of food? And there's plenty of food in this valley. We bring it in millions and millions of pounds every single month. Challenging because this state only produces 3% of the food that it needs. 97% of our food comes from another state.
Well, we're not a real agricultural
giant. We're not growing corn out there in the desert.
Not seeing a lot of that.
Yeah.
Now, when Three Square first started, I loved the story that, as you said, 8 years ago, Three Square began. It wasn't a food bank. It was not designed to be a food bank.
We were never going to be a food bank. Really, it was Eric Hilton, the youngest son of Conrad Hilton, Hilton Hotel fame, that summoned the community around this issue of food insecurity. And it was really based around his awareness that kids weren't getting fed in the summer. The current food bank was about to close, and he wanted to do something around getting kids fed. So he actually formed the board in 05 or 06. So they were preparing, still searching for the niche of what he and his leaders and the board, founding president Poonam Mather was there, Julie Murray. What were they going to do to positively affect the nutrition of kids? And at the same time, Feeding America was looking for a new energy around the food bank that was currently here. And so good things happen when you get smart people in the same room, and that's what happened. Three Square was born out of Eric's vision, but it blossomed into a food bank. So we didn't know all the answers. Feeding America brought many experts from around the country, got us up and running, and then we just really looked at solution-based type results and what would it take to, we don't say solve hunger, but what we would do is we would state that we could bring enough food into this valley and make it accessible for everybody that's food insecure. And if we could do that, the most basic human need of food, good things will happen.
Absolutely. And you mentioned just now, 40 million meals is what you're looking at?
40 million pounds.
40 million pounds.
Will be
I
right
heard a
around,
big number and went, whoa.
This fiscal year, we'll distribute about 35 million total meals, either through kitchen, food bank activity. We have a SNAP program that connects people with EBT benefits. That's a great program, right? The SNAP program that we help execute in the valley here, it brings approximately $7 million worth of funding here to the town, because when you connect people with SNAP benefits that are eligible, then they get to go to the grocery store and they have choice and they have a level of dignity. And obviously that stimulates the economy. Now the grocery stores have to bring more food in. They have to pay people to stock it. So it's really a good thing. SNAP is one of the biggest programs under the Farm Bill that helps feed people.
It's very important. And the people who are on SNAP, they're not getting a big amount of funding.
Yeah,
it's under $20 a week. The last time I checked, that's what it was.
Yeah, there's a misnomer out there. The naysayers will say, well, they're on food stamps and
they're buying lobsters.
Yeah, right. It's not happening. I worked in the grocery store for 33 years. I can count half a dozen times when people bought the crab and lobsters. It's just not happening. Here's how food stamps work. The average benefit is $119, and they could be on that benefit for anywhere from 6 to 8 months. And that's it. So if you got a family of 4, you're out there with $520, right? Or $500, and you're trying to feed a family of 4. Now, it's supposed to be supplemental. It's not supposed to be 100% of your groceries. So what ends up happening if you're on SNAP is generally your benefits run out the first couple weeks. 12th, 13th of the month, you've exhausted your benefits. So the grocery stores are busy for the first week or 2 of the month, right? That's why you see on the first of the month lots of folks shopping, big full baskets. They're trying to fill their pantries and stretch that food dollar as much as they can. Here's one thing they don't do is they don't buy fresh produce. They're buying canned goods and pastas and belly fillers and probably high sodium items that are not the best food choices.
Ramen noodles, I know they're inexpensive, and this is where I talk about nutrition, but the sodium is crazy.
Yeah.
And you're not getting the fiber and the other nutrients, things that you need in the diet and your fruits and vegetables.
You need the fruits and vegetables. They're expensive. And so someone that is on EBT or SNAP is not buying those fruits and vegetables. That's why it's important for us when we look at trying to close the meal gap here in Southern Nevada, we really look at fruits and vegetables as being the main driver of that food source.
I'm a plant-based diet person, so fruits and vegetables are a mainstay all the time for my household. And I can't imagine people not being able to access that. It's such an important part of your daily nutrition.
And I think earlier on your show, I talked about how the retail sector throws 22 billion pounds of food in a landfill each year. Agriculture sector has 48 billion pounds of food every year that actually never makes it to market. It's either plowed back into the fields, it's just never harvested. Because again, we live in a country that we program our citizens, we must have a lot of food. And when you go into a grocery store, there better be a healthy supply, hundreds of apples of each variety, full heaping displays of meat and bread and deli items, and it just better look fantastic. So we insist that our manufacturers and our farmers grow enough product, and they do. They grow excess. So when you look at fruits and vegetables in this country and you have 48 billion pounds extra, somebody should latch onto that and bring them on in. So that's what we're doing. And what we plan on doing over the next 2 years is making about 55 or 60% of our distribution fresh fruits and vegetables.
That would be so good for everyone.
Yeah.
You talk about the amount of produce that goes to waste. 3 Square latches onto that. At that point, is a big part of it logistics, getting the food that you're able to access and making sure it's distributed to all the people who need it?
Yeah, there's a lot of trips out there. So we're blessed to have a fleet of soon to be 28 vehicles, and we go around to 155 retail establishments. Most big box retailers we're going to 4 days a week. We're picking up that food, and some is not as much as others. And so what we try to do there is obviously work with the retailers to try to stimulate a higher level of engagement and performance. Not everybody operates the same way and performs the same way, so we certainly know that there's room for improvement. Having said that, we're probably one of the best counties in the Feeding America network when it comes to recovering food. Again, 22 billion pounds in just the retail sector. As a country, we rescue about 2.1 billion pounds of that. So we're not performing as a country very well. We're putting it in a landfill. But when you look at this market, we're north of 13 million pounds every year recovered from grocery stores, but we really think there's 24 million pounds out there, so there's a lot of room for improvement. Having said that, we're 50-55% of the market, which is very, very good compared to our peer group.
You work with Feeding America that helps with food banks all throughout the U.S., and they would probably hold you up as a shining example with 3 Square that you are outperforming most of the other locations. recommendations.
Absolutely. They've come out a couple times now for their biannual audit that they perform. It's a 3-day audit, white glove type stuff, and it also looks at your capability. And I think they really give us the ultimate compliment where they say there's 3 or 4 food banks in the country that could effectively close the meal gap in their service area, and you're one of them. So having that said, in a food bank that's only 8 years old, in an industry that's 40 years old, I think that's pretty remarkable. But, we don't ever say we've always done it that way because we're so young. We're still learning the best ways to do it. But what we have is a sense of urgency and a mindset that we can actually get to our goal. And again, this is a great community that rallies around something. So if we can take a social injustice and make enough awareness in the community about it, look what we've done so far. This community is awesome in that sense. So really, when you look at hunger, food insecurity, it's all about awareness.
Dan Williams is with us today, the COO for 3 Square. You're a local, educated here. You said 33 years in the grocery business.
I did.
And then you stepped away from that and you went to 3 Square. I believe that you told me in the past it was your opportunity to do something bigger.
Brian, our CEO, says it the best. You went from success to significance. And yeah, I was born and raised in this town. I went to work very early, 17 years old, and I spent 33 years working for grocery stores. So when I hit 50 years old, I don't know if I want to end my career in the grocery business. And I had a lot of success, and it certainly gave me the possessions I have today, and it taught me a lot. Worked with thousands of people and felt good about what I did for the community, but how was I really giving back? So when I was able to meet Brian and learn more about 3 Square, we really determined that there is so much more we can do to give back to this community and be effective, and that's self-fulfilling for me.
It's a special place in my book. 3 Square, I kind of think of it as the big food umbrella that gathers everything in your huge warehouses. And then you do distribution to food pantries, different organizations, so you can trickle it out into the communities and outlying areas in this part of the state to make sure that that food actually makes it to people. And when you're dealing with produce, knowing that part of the problem with produce is it's got a natural expiration to it, that would make it a little bit tougher, knowing how important fruits and vegetables are.
Yeah, so sense of urgency is key. And you mentioned our agency partners. It's really the agency partners that are the heroes in fighting hunger. They're on the front lines every day. We're blessed enough to be 1 or 2 steps removed. Our agency partners are serving more than 137,000 unique individuals every single month. That's tough to do. It's a grind. They're the real heroes, and we work very closely with them. In fact, our new 4-year strategic plan is really about adding value to their operation. We've been up and coming and learning our curve over the last 8 years and feel very good about where we are today and how we are positioned to grow and maybe get to that 50 million pounds. When we get to 50 million pounds every year, we got to maintain that, but that's where you kind of say, okay, there's enough food in the valley. The real science with solving food insecurity is about where to put the food in the right place at the right time to the right person. So we have to analyze all of our counties very closely. We have great data to do that, but we determine how many people in each zip code are food insecure. So once we know that, it's really targeting, and new agency partners are working with existing agency partners to say 89166 up by Centennial High School, it's one of the higher food insecurity rates. You wouldn't think that.
I wouldn't.
You wouldn't think that, but the recession hit that zip code
Sure, North
hard.
Las Vegas went through some real struggles.
Absolutely. And so we know 89101 and 102 is ground zero,
downtown,
right? That's ground zero. You have a lot of homeless population in there. So food insecurity numbers spike there for sure, excess of 30%. So the national rate is 14.8%. We're about 15.4% as a county. But when you look at outlying zip codes that you wouldn't think there's a food insecurity problem, there's 16% food insecurity out there. So again, that's the awareness issue. Well, there can't be food insecure people in 89166. Yes, there is. There's people people that are underwater in their homes. There's people that are underemployed, and they're using food as
I can cut back on this.
I can cut back. I don't have to eat today. Or they'll say, I just don't have the money to go to the grocery store and make the meal. I might not know how to make a good meal out of a low amount of money. So what I do, I go to the dollar menu. I go to fast food. What kind of establishments are popping up in food deserts and impoverished areas?
Fast food,
right? That's all you see on TV nowadays, it seems to me.
Yes, and I know that there are some areas, I want to say out in Southern California, that there are certain areas where they are not allowed to put fast food into this neighborhood because it's the only thing that people can access.
Right.
Even if they try, they can only go so far, and they can't get the fruits, the vegetables, the fresh foods that they really need. So you're right. As a last resort or as an only resort, they end up going to the dollar menu.
Right. If a fast food joint can make a burger for $1, you can do it at home.
Oh, I can show you some stuff.
But you're right. It's the fruits and the vegetables. So when we look at hopefully distributing 30 million pounds of fresh produce by 2018, that's coming to you as a farmer's market style drop. We're coming to your neighborhood. If you're in a food insecure area, we're bringing fresh fruits and vegetables to you. Snack on that all day long.
That would make a huge difference in the kids, their tummies, their learning abilities, in the adults too. I'm a big one on keeping blood sugars stable, preventing things so you don't have to deal with the type 2 diabetes that is so prevalent. I believe food is medicine, but I need to give you the right food to take care of you.
Right. You know, if you look at food insecurity in the United States at 16%, 15.5%, if the CDC was measuring a disease and 1 in 7 or 1 in 6 people was affected by it, they'd call it an epidemic.
Yeah, it would be.
But we don't call it an epidemic in this country because we have plenty of food. And a lot of people just don't know the mass amounts. They hear about it, right? Social media, or every now and then a news station will run how wasteful we are as a nation, and you move on. So true awareness is what it's going to take for people to take action.
There was a public service announcement. In fact, I'll put the link on our Talking Solutions Facebook page where we'll have all the information and also the podcast of our discussion today. But there was a public service announcement that ran 1 or 2 minutes that I saw just a month or so ago, and it had to do with a pound of strawberries. And it showed the strawberries growing in the field, beautiful, harvested, put into the little boxes, all of the care and the effort that was put into putting this pound of strawberries into my grocery store. So someone ends up putting that in their basket, and then it goes to their house, gets tucked away in a corner of the refrigerator and not paid attention to. And within a period of days, it ends up in the trash. And that breaks my heart to know that it was there, it was perfect, it was consumable, but it ends up just being thrown away. And that's what we do in so many cases. It's a campaign for all of us to waste less of what we've already purchased, because it says the average American household wastes so many pounds of food every year.
We do. And that's just in our household. Think about in the field where you have an entire acre of strawberries and the market does not demand that to come in. And no wholesaler or no company wants to buy those berries. So what does the farmer have to do? Let it rot. You're not going to pick them. There's nowhere to go with them. You're not going to spend labor to pick them. And so they sit in the field. And so we've wasted the time and the water, the natural resources. So when you think about 22 billion pounds just in the retail sector, how much water did it take to grow that product, and how much fuel did it take to discard it, and what is the impact to the environment, the greenhouse gases that emit from that food? And I don't know the true number, but I've heard 40% of the items that are in a landfill are food. And so we're producing food, growing food, throwing food away. This is a very smart country. We probably want to stop something like that.
With the brain power of all of us, I think we could handle this. And we still, with all the food and all of the waste, we still have hungry people, especially during the summer. We have hungry kids.
Right.
We cannot tolerate this. So what can we do as individuals to best help Three Square with your goal of helping to solve this food insecurity?
So How much time do we have?
However much time we need.
Well, there's so much you can do. You know, we always say give an hour, give a can, or give $1. Everything helps. $1 helps. We can put out 3 meals. Almost 4 pounds of food we can put out for just $1. So cash is really always the best way to go because we can use it so effectively. 94 cents of every dollar that we bring in go directly to programs and distribution and procurement. We're a very efficient model. So yeah, the dollar is a lot more powerful than what you can spend out in the community. We need volunteers every day. We're packing 10 to 11,000 meals a day in our kitchen, freshly made meals that have to be assembled. It takes anywhere from 55 to 60 people a day to make that happen. We always need volunteers. If we're going to bring in 20, 30 million pounds of produce over the next couple of years, we buy it in bulk. So we buy this and it's delivered here 1 to 3 days from the field. And we buy that in bulk because it's cheaper to do it that way. But in turn, we don't distribute it in bulk. We want to package that in bags. So when we go and distribute that, we can give 3 pounds of oranges, 3 pounds of apples, 3 pounds of potatoes. So we need volunteers to bag that produce and then advocate. Use your voice. I mean, if you knew what you could do with your voice, talking to legislators, talking to city council, anybody that you can get a hold of to spread the word that food insecurity is a real issue. And you can call it hunger, you can call it food insecurity, but at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is just take all the food that this nation has produced and connect it to people who need it. So the naysayers, they're going to be on an island out there somewhere because the reality is if you don't think there's food insecurity in any community, come on out on any given day, but especially a Saturday when people, the working poor, might have a day off on Saturday and they're going to spend 3 or 4 hours maybe standing in a line or going through the process of procuring food from an agency partner of ours. And we try to make it as streamlined as we can, but it takes time. You don't have the luxury as a food insecure person to go to the grocery store and buy your groceries and check out. You have to stand in lines at agency partners. So come on out on a Saturday and let's show you how that looks, because that's really what's going on with food insecurity. So the people that are removed from it, bless you. You're working hard, you're paying your taxes, and you're doing the right thing for your family. But when you look at 1 in 6 and 1 in 7 people that are food insecure, that means we have 5 or 6 other people that can help that one person. And that's community, and that's what I think this nation needs as a message. We look at, I think it was Venezuela, just saw it in the news the other day. There's not enough food. People are starving. They're looting grocery stores. They're stealing food. They're that desperate. And here in this country, we produce 40% more food than we consume, and we have hungry people. There's something fundamentally wrong with that.
Every now and then you see a story on the news about a police officer sympathetic to a person who was stealing bread from a grocery store or got caught stealing some vegetables or whatever it was that they took. And they catch them in the act and realize it was hungry people just needing to be fed. They are compassionate and they say, I'm not going to charge this person. Being hungry is never a crime. The crime is that it exists in the first place.
Right.
But there's ways that we can help fix it. Dan Williams, COO for 3 Square, the food bank, is with us today. And the things that you mentioned just now, Dan, about what we can do to help. If we've got $1, give it to you. You can do great things with it. If I don't have the dollar, or even if I do, either way, volunteering, you guys rely heavily on volunteers to help do the logistics of getting all of these food items out to the people who need it, and also using our voices to advocate, make people aware that this is an issue. You may not see it in your neighborhood, but believe me, it's there.
It is. And thank you for keeping this going. Don't like to bash the media either, but every time you turn on the TV, it's something negative. And so when you talk about things that are positive and what we can do, that's not a big part of the media's life. I don't know if we can ever change that, but moments like this and shows like this that you produce are very important, and if we can get this kind of message out in force, people will rally behind that.
That's why we call it Talking Solutions. Dan Williams, is there anything that we've forgotten we want to remember childhood hunger in the summer is a big issue, and Three Square, from the beginning, has always really pushed taking care of this issue in the summer.
Yeah, our message is very simple. Together we can feed everyone. That's actually true. It's something that we can actually do. There is enough food in this country. We can bring it here into Clark County. We can get it effectively distributed, and people will have access to wholesome food that will nourish their body, that will get their kids in a position where they can learn at school, and we shouldn't be talking about hunger in this country.
It should be in the past. We should say, hey, you remember back in the day?
Absolutely.
We can make it happen. I like your mantra. Together we can feed everyone. It's Three Square. Dan Williams, the Chief Operating Officer. Love it when you come to visit. You know you can come here anytime.
Well, thank you. I might drive by every other day then.
Come on over. You know where to find me.
Thank you, Terry, for having me. It was a pleasure.
After 33 years in the grocery business and being a local Las Vegas boy, you made the transition to come to Three Square. Do you feel good about what you do when you go home at night?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And I could do this job for the rest of my life. It's not really a job to me anymore. It's what I do every single day. So I get to go to Three Square. I get to do this job. I'm paid to do this job, which obviously everybody has to have a job. But this is something that it makes you feel good about what you do every day. And there's hundreds of thousands and millions of people that we will help serve through our agency partners over the years. And I will probably not meet too many of them. But again, I know what I do is important, but we need to get more people involved.
It's Three Square Food Bank. threesquare.org is the website.
www.threesquare.org.
So if you want any information, of course, also all the info, links, and everything will be on our Talking Solutions Facebook page, along with a podcast of this discussion. Dan, thanks so much for coming in.
Terry, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.